At the time of the sleepover, it was me and my best friend, both age 7 or 8. We are both now 16 and 17 and haven't talked about this incident since. We lived in Florida, about 15 minutes away from Tampa. It was one of our many sleepovers we had, and it was no different from others. We played with Barbies, watched movies, read books, until we couldn't take it anymore and went to bed around 9 or 10. I turned off the lights and climbed up to my top bunk where both me and my friend were going to sleep. As I lay down, something immediately didn't feel right. The house I lived in was relatively old, and our landlord sucked and never came to fix anything. Let alone, did he only care when our rent was due. Before getting in bed, I flipped on my fan and had my mom turn the AC down. But as I got in bed, my fan was turned off, so was the AC. But I thought the power went out and didn't think much of it. About 20 minutes go by and I can't sleep, and I feel like I'm dying of heat stroke. I'm not sure if my friend is awake, so I say her name quietly. She responds immediately, saying I can't sleep. But it's not because it's hot. I look over and can barely see her but her silhouette. I look up at the ceiling and sigh and say, "What is it then?" She responds saying it's the man in the corner. When I say I got chills, I got chills. I look over at her slowly and turn my head to look at the corner. I thought she was lying because I didn't see anything. I let out a breath of air I didn't know I was holding in. I go to adjust my blanket, and that's when I see him. A man, dark and tall, seeming to stare at both of us. I immediately grip my friend's hand and close my eyes hard. "We have to get my mom," I whispered, and I felt my friend nod. But we both laid there, unable to move. All of a sudden, I feel the movement of someone climbing up the ladder and crawling slowly. The blankets move with the movement, and I slowly open my eyes to watch the man slowly starting to crawl towards us. I was gasping for air and looked over to see my friend watching too, paralyzed from moving. I look back at the man and can only see his outline, no features. I hold my friend's hand tight and say, "Scream when I tap you," finger I barely got out in a whisper. She slowly nodded, and as I watched the man slowly reach for my face, I tapped her hand and we both screamed bloody murder. My mom came running in, no later than 20 seconds, and turned on the light, and both me and my friend were holding each other crying. There was no trace of the man, and my mom checked all doors, saying they were locked and weren't even touched. We both slept on the couch that night, watching Barbie movies, and holding each other tightly. To this day, I don't know what it was, or who it was, but I will always remember the eerie feeling of death being close to my face. I apologize if this doesn't flow super well or is very artistically written. This Saturday, May 29th, me and my two good friends were hanging out. Every time we're together, we like to go for drives at night along this one road. Sometimes we stop by some local parks and walk around just talking or messing around. This time, we decided to stop by a field which we planned to kick a soccer ball around in. It was around 2 a.m., and the area seemed pretty dead except for the occasional passing car or ranger closing the park. When we arrived at the field, we noticed a newly built playground was now in the field, and we thought it would be cool to just mess around on it. First, I parked the car and faced the high beams towards the field, leaving it running so we could use it to see what we were doing. Then we got out and started passing around the soccer ball, enjoying the weird vibes of it all and having a loud conversation. After a bit we got bored and decided to go on the playground. I reparked the car so the high beams were facing it, and once again we got out and started heading towards it. The playground constituted of a large, castle-like structure in the middle, surrounded by balance obstacles, balance beams, wavy bridges, etc. We headed towards the main castle, taking our time, strolling on the obstacles, again enjoying the effect the high beams had on the environment. Looking back at the car, all I could see was our silhouettes, and if you looked at the playground, our figures cast long pitch-black shadows on the castle, adding a feeling that parts of the castle were shrouded and hidden. As I took one more step closer to the castle, however, these feelings of excitedness and mild spookiness were slightly tarnished. I was hit with the smell of cigarette, as if someone was smoking one just in front of me. Not realizing the implications, I called out for one of my friends and told them I smelt a cigarette. They said they didn't and stepped closer. They smelt it too. Part joking and part serious, I said, what if there's someone over there smoking a cigarette? Being the skittish and on-edge kids we were, we ran back to the car, laughing and joking. Once we sat down in the car, my friend suggested we drive around and scan the playground for anyone there, as we were now extremely curious. I took the car and drove it in a circle, then back around, sweeping from the right side of the playground to the left, exposing nothing. We then realized we had left the soccer ball in the field, so I drove the car into the field, and my friend stepped out and grabbed it. After this, we decided to do one last sweep, and then get the hell out of there as we were kind of spooked at this point. I scanned the playground with the high beams one last time, and then stopped the car, facing the playground. We sat there for around 15 seconds, on our phones, about to drive off, when it happened. My friend sitting in the back seat was the first to see it, starting to say something like, "Do you guys see that?" And then I looked up. Underneath the wooden beams of the now ominous castle, we saw a shape. A blurry red circle with a white center, moving as if it were a person. I know that doesn't make sense, but that's all I can say. It appeared as if it started from the back of the castle, and was moving in a creature-like manner towards the front of the castle. Towards us. In this split second of silence as we watched this, I unconsciously slammed the car into reverse, and began very quickly spinning to get 180, and now remembering that moment, I have never felt that much fear in my entire life. Something about the way that thing was moving made me feel so unbelievably petrified. My stomach felt like it was thrown off a cliff and my hair stood straight like a bed of nails. All three of us were now screaming and I quickly and sloppily drove away. We had all seen the exact same thing. We now were driving away and began to calm down just a little and began wondering what the hell that thing was. I assumed it was probably some homeless person who had went under the playground for a smoke or something. To be sure, we decided we would drive past again and try to get a better look at the playground, maybe seeing that what we had seen was some part of the playground, or maybe catching the person who had walked out from under the castle in a better light. As we came nearer to the playground, the tension began rising again, and I began to pull into the road which was connected to the parking lot. As I turned, my beams glanced over the playground for a second and then over the road. On the side of the road walked a man. He was dressed in a full sweat clothing outfit, with his hood over a baseball hat and a Swiss Army backpack. I quickly sped by him and we felt as though we may have gotten our answer. We kept driving for a few seconds, and then realized we had not seen any red on him. It was all white. I decided to turn back around and get a better look at this man to get some closure. When I went back on the same road, he was not there anymore. I assumed he ducked into the woods or something, so I kept going back towards my friend's house, deciding to return home. Taking the turn back onto the main road though, we saw him again. This time, he was walking in the complete opposite direction, unrealistically far from where we first saw him, again with his back to us. This was the cherry of weirdness on top, and we drove back home in a state of excited terror. The one thing which we couldn't stop repeating was the fact that whoever that was, had been there the whole time. Under the castle. Simply watching and listening to us. If I had simply ignored the cigarette smoke and went on the castle, they would have been under us, just observing. I could have pretty easily made this story sound much more than it was, adding the detail that the playground was built to memorialize a boy who was killed in a horrific lawnmower accident, but I don't think that would properly portray what we experienced. I have no idea what we saw, and when we got back to my friend's house we started analyzing photos of the playground from different angles, trying to see if there was something which looked like what we saw, but we couldn't find anything. Look up Jack's Place Playground on Google Maps to find the playground. Which story did you like best? Comment, like, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Until we meet again.